You make better friends and better connections, and the relationships are stronger. How do you engage people so they feel they have some skin in the game? I start from a position of agency rather than victimhood. I start with the position of I'm in charge of me. Fun is valuable. When you're having fun, it's in the moment. You're not thinking about the past. You're not worrying about the future. Having fun in the moment that's purposeful, I think is good for clients, good for oneself, good for health, good for the planet.
Hello and welcome to the Success Differently podcast. My name is Michelle Sorgaroli. I am your host today, and we are being joined by our very special guest, David Gouthro. David is the president of the Consulting Edge, and he is a certified professional speaker. And because he has, from my experience, been blessed with an insatiable curiosity and a very playful spirit, he tends to wear many hats, including facilitator, MC, interviewer, mood lightener, impact seeker, and podcast host most recently. As a young man, David started his adult journey at the University of Waterloo, where he did a Bachelor of Science. And from my understanding, he was a very active member of that campus, including in the sports and the music arena. For the last 40 years or so, David has partnered with senior executives, leadership teams, and boards across multiple industries to structure conversations that move people from ideas to action. And fun fact, David likes to say that he is 100% Canadian, and he likes both blueberries and chocolate, individually or in combination. David, thank you so much for being here. This is a treat.
It's my pleasure, Michelle. Whatever you said, that's all there is. So I don't know, we're going to talk. Yeah, that's it. You know me fully now.
Exactly. Being a very skilled facilitator of conversations, I know we're going to have some fun today. I am curious, if we start way back, because we've never talked about this, so although we've known each other a little while now, some moons we have, we've never actually talked about your degree from Waterloo in the Bachelor of Science in Earth Science, I think it was. Is that right?
That's correct. Absolutely.
About that. And then how did you go from Bachelor of Science to facilitating conversations and the Consulting Edge? Like, what happened from science to now leading businesses and facilitating conversations?
Well, excuse me. First of all, why I chose science, I don't like writing essays, so I eliminated arts. I had never taken any biology, and it seemed like too much memory work, so out goes biology. And excuse me, chemistry and physics were way too much math. So as it turns out, there's actually a lot of math in geology as well, if you're doing groundwater modeling and things like that. But I really like being outdoors as well. So earth science seemed to be the way to go. But what started to lead into what I'm doing now, I would tend to say that I majored in residence and minored in earth science. So most of any skills that I acquired and love for people was done by living in residence for 5 years. Still those years as a Don in Village One. So I had like 45 plus guys that I was kind of responsible for corralling, and then doing other things like producing an amateur show at the university that had nothing to do with my work. The previous producer had quit. They said, so I was approached in the parking lot. They said, "Oh yeah, we've lost our producer." And I said, "That's very sad." And they said, "Well, would you like to do that?" And I said, "I don't know anything about it." Okay. So I ended up producing a show that was put on by the faculty, administration, staff, and students with a cast and crew of 140 people. So,
oh my goodness.
It was a fabulous learning experience, as most of the skills that I've acquired that feed into what I'm doing now were accidental more than anything.
Isn't that phenomenal? Just living, as you said, living in residence and getting so much as a Don, being actively involved in campus and
Yes.
producing a show. So what were some of the things that really stood out as you look back to producing 100, I would imagine it was a bit like herding cats.
Oh, yes.
Producing a show for 140 people. What did you learn back then, or what stood out for you as you reflect back on those years?
Well, part of it, now that I think about it, I haven't thought about this before, but is delegation and getting other people to do the things they're good at, because I could not do it all, especially since I didn't know what I was doing. So I listened to a lot of people, took advice, and had to be more organized than is my natural tendency. I really appreciate things that are organized. I really have to force myself to do that, mostly because of what will happen if I don't, but it's not a natural skill like my wife has. That's very, very, everything's organized. It's not in my DNA, so I really have to practice on that. So I think those were some of the things that came out of that experience: the need to be organized, and also the need to to share the workload.
Yeah. It's I'm reflecting back on your how you chose science and earth science specifically. It's just such a it's funny and actually so informative. I'm reflecting on my own because my journey was similar. I went back to university after a couple of years of being out of high school. So I graduated and then I took a couple of years off to, whatever you just work and make some money and do my thing. I was kind of tired of school.
Mhm.
And I chose very similarly. But for me, science was too much work and those labs were just too much work. And I didn't want to do sciences. I didn't want to do sciences. I actually thought I wanted to do math.
Oh,
So I did math. I thought I was going to major in math through the arts program. I thought I was going to major in math. And then I took second year statistics and that caused a course correct for me when I realized stats was not my thing and I didn't want to do that anymore. But what you said was, you alluded to doing things I'm good at and being enjoying it. And as you were
yeah.
thinking about the choices you made, yes, you joked about, yes, I didn't want to do that and I didn't want to do that. But I'm hearing there was also something that you actually enjoyed being outside. And the topic was something that was maybe of interest in geology.
Yeah, it's probably a bit of both, knowing what I didn't want to do and what I did want to do, like trying to find that balance. And this is probably, I'll get in trouble for this metaphor, but it's kind of like if you, I didn't get married till I was 46. So, when you're dating when you're older, it's much easier to, when you're dating someone, go, nope, 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 nope.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay, right. So it's much easier to know what you don't want, much easier to declare around that and to
Sure.
commit to that than
Mm,
it is to commit about the path you are taking, because it may or may not be right. There's no guarantee, but it's much better than the options that won't work. So, I know that all these other sciences and arts definitely wouldn't work. I thought geology might, and I thoroughly enjoyed it, and it certainly paid off when I had a mining company for a client because I knew the
yeah.
language, if not the meaning of the words. But yeah, that was just, yeah. So it's similar to, I think, the way we make decisions as we get older. I think
Mm,
I'm projecting here, but I'm much clearer in what I don't want to do now.
mm-hmm.
Can't guarantee what I do want to do is going to pay off, but it's a lot faster and easier to say no rather than
Mm-hmm.
waste time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What do you think might have, was there anything in your background before starting university that might have helped you come to that clarity early on, saying, I don't want to do that, I don't want to do that, and sure, that looks like it might work. Was there anything in your backstory that may have influenced that thinking?
Not that I can think of, Michelle. I mean, most of I was opportunistic in my decisions. So I never went after something like I want to be this, I want to be that, I want to be that. That typically, if I was asked to do something, I'd say yes. So
Mm,
for in high school for probably 3 out of the 4 years I was there, because we had grade 13 way back when in
right.
Ontario. I was class president or whatever it was, just because it's kind of like a worker job, and it's like, I'll give it to David, he'll do anything. And it was kind of fun. Same sort of thing in well, and in sports. Like I was said, do you want to be in the wrestling team? The last thing I want to do is be in the wrestling team, but why not? How much can it hurt? I do have an answer to that question. Or playing football is because of my age, not because of my talent. So, I would say my career is sprinkled with well, I think the theme is I'm a participator. I'm not great at anything, but I'm really curious and interested in doing a whole pile of different things. And I don't need to be, I'm not competitive versus
Mm,
someone else. So, but I
mm.
want to do the best I can. So I think that's a theme that's run through the work that I've done.
Yeah, I think that's actually really good insight, thinking about yourself. And I have experienced you as a facilitator, and certainly know that that's a major part of a lot of the work that you do. Um, just thinking about facilitation, as a facilitator, there is a degree of participation from my perspective. Hey,
Yeah. Am I allowed to argue with you? You're the host. Maybe I should. So I'd say that the
yes,
degree
you're
of
allowed to argue
participation.
with me.
I think that's a bowl of it. No, so I think that the participation is in creating structures
Yeah,
and processes for other people to
yeah.
participate. So, like I was just on a webinar with one of my clients the other day, and it was sort of follow up to a program I'd done with them. just for an hour. I said, so my objective in this is for me to do the least talking possible, because you're going to learn a whole lot more from each other in your environment than anything I can tell you as an
Mm,
outsider. And I believe that's really foundational for me, is how to give other people the opportunity to speak and participate. And I don't think it's a lack of
mm,
self-esteem, like I have nothing to offer. I have all kinds of opinions on all kinds of things.
mm.
But I feel the greatest value that I can bring is by creating environments for other people to have conversations and chat and decide what they're going to do with what they've talked about.
Yeah, agreed.
So it is
And
participating, but it's
yeah,
not, I mean,
in it, yeah.
it's different from the way I think you might have,
No. I
been
was
thinking
thinking
about it.
you're sort of in it, but you're not in it. So yeah, I agree with that. But I guess where I'm coming from is, you just spoke about as a facilitator, you actually, what I was envisioning, I was going back to your producing the show of 100 for 140 people. You were giving, there's a piece of that
Oh, I
there.
need to correct that. It was 120 people. I don't want to,
Oh,
you just said 440 and I'm good, but
140,
I'm not that good, really. Not at that
There you
age
go. Well,
anyhow.
the
Maybe
numbers
now.
just keep getting bigger. We can exaggerate as we
Oh
get
yeah.
up further and further away, right?
Yeah.
Just numbers get bigger and bigger. Anyway,
No
from
one's going to fact
120
check.
people. Thanks for that. Yes. So curiosity, not competitive. You like to participate. You like to be involved. You have an insatiable curiosity. You like to facilitate conversations and give other people opportunity. Seems to be a theme for you.
I would say, yeah,
Mm,
I enjoy it. I do recall one time there's a bunch of us in university that used to go cross country skiing at the Wigamogin every year. And I remember one person said something to me that really struck, said, you are so good at asking people about how they're doing and their questions, but we never get to know you. And
mhm,
boy, did that ever hit, because I didn't think
mhm,
that was my conscious intention to do it. And maybe
mhm.
it was about keeping me safe. I hope that wasn't the case. But I do realize that, the more I'm asking other people about things, the less they get to know about me. And I don't like talking about myself particularly. So
Right.
it's braggadociousness is not a word that I can spell or live.
I felt like that insight was important to you.
Mm.
I'm wondering if you might share a little bit more about that with us.
Well, only in the sense so I'm going to reflect back on a story that Robert Fulghum wrote. He wrote Everything I Needed to Know I Learned in Kindergarten, and one of his stories was he was sitting in his house, and there was and the kids in the neighborhood were playing hide and seek. And he looked out the
Mm,
window, and there was a kid down there in between, the trees or the bushes and the house. No one would ever find him. And, he opened the window and shouted out to the kid and said, get found, get found. And part of the story was about, allowing yourself to be found and to be known. So part of it is that, in a funny kind of way, I don't want to tell people about me, but I also want to be known, if that makes
mm.
sense. It's a bit of a contradiction there.
Yeah, I think that's really common, actually.
Mm.
A lot of people want to be found, but don't want to be known per se. That's what you said, isn't it? Is that
Well,
what I
and
heard?
I don't want to tell people about me, but
Yeah,
I want to be known.
yeah,
But I don't want to be known because I've told people
yeah.
about it. I'd like it to
It
come from
feels
them, which is tough to do.
It is tough to do, and it's something that's not easy for a lot of people. It's not everybody, obviously, but a lot of people feel that way. So, as you've been building your business over the last 40 years, particularly as the president of the Consulting Edge, and you led CAPS for at least a year, if not longer, as well, didn't you, nationally? The Canadian
Yep.
Association of Professional Speakers. Um,
2012, it was a good year.
yeah, there you go. Um, what are some ways that you have helped yourself be known and found without talking about yourself per se?
Well, I probably haven't intentionally gone out and done that, but I think being on podcasts like this is great.
Mm,
Members on another friend's podcast, and she asked me a whole pile of questions. And I remember afterwards thinking, if people listen to this, they'll really get a sense of who I am, right? But I wouldn't have volunteered that. Happy to have it drawn out of me, like suck
Mm.
all that information out. But don't wind me up and expect me to go, go, go in terms of
Right.
talking about myself like I
Yeah.
am now.
Yeah. There you go. So when you're, how do you help others, um, when you're trying to draw out? What are some of your tricks of the trade when you're trying to draw others out in support of getting to know them?
Well, there's all kinds of techniques that you can use, like by asking questions and setting context so people don't feel set up. And I don't know that you can do this as a technique, but I need to genuinely care about that person and
Mm,
genuinely be curious, right? Because if it's a technique, I'll certainly feel awkward doing that. And my hunch is that they will as well. So it's starting from a position of really wanting to care and to know this person. And sometimes I don't do coaching because I'm way too opinionated, but I think sometimes it has a coaching effect or a therapeutic effect
mm,
by asking questions that people seem to be wrestling with, but they can't quite articulate it themselves. Like
mhm,
for someone to say, "Oh," like I love it as a podcaster, for my guests to say, "Oh, that's a really good question." I kind of go,
mhm.
"Yes, I'm glad." We're bringing something out that wouldn't have otherwise been there. So I think it's by probing, it's by caring, it's by paying attention, it's by having good eye contact, it's by not being distracted by other
Mhm,
things, just sort of being one-on-one and being with someone. So
mhm.
that's what occurs to me, top of head, anyhow.
No, totally. Knowing you and having experienced that from you, I get that from you. Because you are that way very often, you are probing and asking curiosity questions and beautiful eye contact like you're doing right now. Um, when when how do you know, David, when you've felt seen or heard?
Uh, I'd say less about seen or heard, and maybe it's connected, but appreciated.
Okay.
So when a client calls up and asks for advice or something that's not relative to why they've engaged me, I really feel appreciated. Like they have a sense of what I can do
Mm,
and how I can contribute. Um, yeah, that's and one that occurs to me as myself and a number of my colleagues, we developed some leadership development programs for IBM Canada quite a few years ago. The first and only time they used outside resources to do that. And and after it was all over and done with, one of the fellows on the IBM team, he would call up every year, he and one of his colleagues, about the same time when they're in the development cycle, and say, we would just like to book an hour of your time once a week for 3 weeks in a development cycle. We just want to talk and explore. And to me, that was like, first of all, acknowledgement of
mm,
what I brought, to them as a
mhm,
client, and really made me feel good about that. But it was something that I loved to do. And the metaphor that I like to use is feeling like a an instrument that connected with a musician who really knows how to play me. Like not in a manipulative way, but knows
yeah.
how to get the best out of me because they know me so well. And that feels good, the fact that they know me so well. And they're absolutely right. I mean, I loved doing that work. I would have done it for free. Okay, you
Mhm.
can strike that part out of the podcast, please, Michelle. Just because I love it, I still, have a mortgage, have to get paid.
Still like to be rewarded. Talk and explore and feeling, I think this is really interesting, feeling like an instrument and they know how to play you to get the best out
Mm.
of you. Is that what you said?
Yeah, no, exactly. Exactly. And that's the nice thing about it. There's some clients, like the work that I do, it might be for most clients, it's 1 or 2 days a year, right? And then you kind of wonder what's going on. You're always kind of hunting and gathering. But when I've worked with the same client for 15 years and they keep
Mhm.
calling back, that's a really good sign. It's not because there aren't other people that do what I do. They
Yeah.
may cost more, they may cost less, but the chemistry is so important for something like that. And they know that their best interests are my best interests. I remember diverging here a little bit, but at one point when I was getting lonely in terms of work and thought, oh, maybe I can work with one of the big consulting companies. And I started exploring some of those, and they had, income requirements. Once you be able to make this much money, which wouldn't have been a problem. But the sense was that when you work with a client, you want to do everything you can to squeeze every little bit of juice out of the lemon. And that just didn't feel right for me. Like maybe if I was all about making money as much as possible, that would make sense. But to do that just for the sake of, for the company getting all that money, that might not necessarily be in the client's best interest. I had a really hard time with that. So
Mm-hmm.
I chose I'd rather be alone and happy with myself than working with a group of people where, I'm feeling I'm doing something that's contrary to my values.
Right. That's a very important thing, isn't it, to be able to look yourself in the mirror every day?
Mhm. Say, where did that guy's hair go? Uh, I I stopped doing that 20 years ago. There's no point anymore. But
Mm. And looking in the mirror and seeing someone who's aligned with your values and seeing what's important. I think you talked about chemistry. The thing I'm thinking quite a lot about is when you're such a high spirit, you're always engaged, David. Everything I've always known about you, you're so engaged with whatever community you're involved in a very meaningful way. You're engaged, you're all in. I know that about you. I've seen it and experienced it. And I'm wondering if you look at what is it for you that is so important about that, about being fully engaged and contributing in a way that you're being or experiencing an opportunity to be appreciated.
well, first of all, I think boredom is evil. And you don't, if you're engaged, I can't imagine being bored. Right. So it's not just to avoid boredom, but it's a whole lot more fun. It's a whole more
Mm.
a lot more interesting. You make better friends and better connections, and the relationships are stronger. And so that's really important to me. And I used to have these thoughts many, many years ago. If there was a spaceship leaving Earth, what could I do that's of sufficient value that I would be invited to be on that ship? And I figured, well, it's probably not tweaking the engines. It's probably not, setting the course and things like that, but maybe helping to keep some form of productive harmony going or something like that. So, how, and I guess another way I used to think about it, I should probably think about this more often, that as a result of me being on the planet, does the planet experience a net gain or a net loss? So do I
Mm.
contribute more than I take? And I think there's a lot of people that are more about taking rather than giving. I sometimes wonder how our economy would be if everyone strove to have enough as opposed to as much as possible. And if many of the decisions in business and life were not based in fear or greed or both of those, that really keep people from getting close and developing sound relationships that are meaningful. So
Mm.
I'm pretty sure I didn't answer your question directly, but that's where my mind went.
Oh no, yeah. You're coming back to relationships again.
Yeah.
Um, when you mentioned earlier aligning with your values, and I'm hearing that relationships are obviously a big part. I'm hearing contribution is a big part. Um, where where do you think this comes from in you? If you go way back in your story, maybe before your university years, or maybe it was birth there. Was it? Do you think
Previous
so?
life experiences, regression, and also. So, um, hmm,
What about your family upbringing? Or I'm just curious
yeah,
because you've got such a strong drive to contribute.
yeah, and I don't think that was ever nurtured by my parents, but I think they modeled it.
Mm,
So
nice.
like my parents never said I love you. Didn't hear that once when I was growing up, right?
Ah,
But it was, and so I'd never do that with my daughter. However, they demonstrated it. So my mother, she grew up on a farm, when when she and my father had kids, she stayed at home, but she was always warm, always loving. My friends loved to come over to our house. In fact, when I was at university, whether or not I was there, I remember a good friend of mine would just kind of chin himself on the ledge and look in the window to see if my mother was
Oh.
home. Then he get invited in for cookies and tea and stuff like that. And she used to send care packages to university. And so when they came in, oh, Mrs. Gouthro's cookies here we go. So she was always very warm and had a wry sense of humor, like not a kind of humor, but just kind of like a twinkle in her eye.
Mm.
So, partly from that. And my father was always incredibly disciplined. I never picked that up from him. It was all about being precise, which is maybe why I've gone the other direction as I
Mhm.
think about it. Like if I go out and cut the grass, when he thought I wasn't looking, he'd come out and cut it again to get the angles right and stuff like that. But again, very loving and very caring and provided incredibly well for us. And he was well respected in his company, worked there for 37 years before he retired. So, so the discipline, and he was always very calm. Like I never saw my parents argue that I can recall. Maybe they did that somewhere else. So getting along might have been, a theme that came through. I do remember one time when my mother which is a very gentle person, and I can't remember what my father said that bugged her, but she'd been putting some ketchup on a piece of bread for him and just went whoosh and put it in his face. I thought I was going to die laughing because it was so out of character for something that she would do. But it was kind of that playfulness and the fact that my friends liked to come to my parents' place, even when I was in university. I remember one time there's the inner tube water polo tournament at York University, and a bunch of my friends came back and stayed on the floor at our place, and my mother was quite happy to have them on the floor and feed them and stuff like that. It was always warm and welcoming. Maybe it's because people are like that growing up on a farm. I don't know, but it wasn't typical city behavior,
Mhm.
right? And there,
Mhm.
that was fear-based and things like that. It was very warm and accepting and come on in.
Mhm.
So that's probably where part of who I am came from.
Yeah, I would think so. So if you fast forward to today and you think in that spaceship that you've been invited on, it's a
Yikes.
jet, it's just on a jet for now. Um, as you think about how you do your work today, what informs your style? Like, what are you wanting to bring as an experience? Yes, you have structured conversations, you're moving people from ideas to action. What's informing the way you do what you do?
Well, a couple of things. One is a mentor that I was fortunate enough to have. That I met a gentleman by the name of Sivasalam Tyagarajan.
Oh.
It goes by the name Tyagi at an International Society for Performance and Instruction Conference, ISPI is what it was called then, in 1980 in Montreal. And his whole workshop he was brilliant at designing games and building frames so that, whatever content you had, you could plunk it into a frame that engaged people. And I love that. So that has informed everything that I do. Like, how do you
Mm.
engage people? How do you keep them active? So that is so deeply infused in me. That was a real gift meeting him. And so I'm always thinking, how can we engage people? If people are going to do a conference and they want to do this, that, and the other thing, and want me to help with design, so how can we engage people? They don't get engaged by having a brilliant speaker at the front talk and everyone else just listens. It doesn't do it. The
Mhm.
translation of that into action is minimal. So how do you engage people so they feel they have some skin in the game, that they're able to do that? So that definitely
I can see that.
informs me.
Your body language just lit up like a firecracker there
Oh
talking about
yeah,
that.
yeah. Well, and it's for me, it's just more fun, to engage with other people. And like I
Mm.
love to be surprised. Like I truly have a belief that anything that happens, I can deal with it somehow. I don't need to have everything. Like when I do a meeting design, it's an intention. It's not a design. So, we flow, we follow the value rather than follow the agenda,
That's
provided that it's
beautiful.
value oriented to the client. And I get permission to do that. So if we need to change, let's change. There's a phrase that I've been starting to use, actually starting last fall, that has really informed a lot of the way I approach anything, and it's made my life so much less stressful. Not that there was ever a whole lot of stress anyhow, Michelle, I gotta tell you.
Getting that impression.
But the phrase is this: I can work with this. I can work with this no matter what. So whenever I'm surprised by something, the first thing I tell myself, I can work with this. I can work with this, so that it's automatic. It's a habit. So not, can I work with it? How am I going to work with it? Oh, and get into the whining and moaning, complaining about it. I start from a position of agency rather than victimhood. So no
Mm,
matter what it is, I can work with this. And I know that to be true. I may not like exactly what happens, but I have some choice in that. So if I'm stuck in traffic, well, I can work with this. So what does that mean? Well, I can listen to some music or things like that. There's nothing I can do in that moment that's going to get me faster where I want to go or have me in better shape when I get there. So I can work with this. Going into a big task that I might kind of get, oh, I don't want to finish this. I'm tired. But as soon as they say I can work with this, it gives me the energy to carry on because I know I can. I know it's my
mm,
choice. It's not a choice of the environment. I'm not a victim of the circumstances.
right.
So whenever anything happens in a room, and I'll give you an example. It's one of my clients, very wonderful client. Usually on day 2 of a 3-day meeting, he comes in the morning and he goes, I, I was just thinking, I wonder, and I used to go, oh shit, what's it gonna be? And now, before he even says another word, as soon as he says I was thinking, I tell myself, I can work with this.
Mhm.
So I'm much more open to listening. I go into a problem solving space rather than the panic space. I don't get into the fight, flight, fawn, flock, all that stuff that hits me back into the old limbic brain. It keeps me
Mhm.
cerebral cortex problem solving. It's true. I can work with this. So that informs just about everything that I do now.
Yeah, it's amazing. Playfulness and curiosity,
Mm,
those two in combination with that final frame of I can work with this,
yeah,
it's kind of magical.
it's very freeing. And it doesn't mean it's going to be a great result or a fantastic outcome, but I know that I start with the position of I'm in charge of me. I can't control necessarily what happens outside, but I can sure control what's inside. And also lately, a friend of mine introduced me to the work of the Stoic philosophers, which I quite like as well. And
Mhm.
once I realized it's not being about being emotionless. It's
Mhm.
about how you deal with what's going on. And
Mhm.
so it's all kind of coming together. I wish it had
Mhm.
come together 50 years ago, but I'll take it now.
Exactly. As it does, it comes together over life, right?
Yeah.
Um, when you spoke, you said follow the value, not the agenda.
Mhm. Mhm.
I love that. I can work with this, and you talked about agency versus or against victimhood, if you will, versus victimhood.
Yeah. Yeah.
Were these always tenets that you had in your
Mm.
business?
No. No. Well, the thing about engaging people, like from 1980, when I've been working for a company called Wilson Learning at the time, before I went to work for Apple, before I went out my own. And so that notion of engaging people, I tried to do in all the roles that I have, either when I was self-employed or working for someone else. The thing about agency versus victim and things like that, I don't know. I would have even understood what the term agency means
Mhm.
5 years ago.
Mhm.
So part of it is, lately more experiences, and partly, I wish you could say it's not a function of age. It's probably more a function of experience.
Mhm.
And I'm getting much clearer about being able to say when something happens, uh, it doesn't matter, as opposed to I don't care. Because I think those are heard quite differently.
Mhm.
So if someone says, "So where do you want to go for dinner tonight?" Oh, I don't care. It's kind of not dismissing the attitude. It's also dismissing the person's not engaging. Where I have to say, "Well, it doesn't matter." Then it's more open way to say, "Yeah, we can go in a whole pile of different directions. I'm not going to, kill it or say yay automatically." And I
Mhm.
think now there's so many things that, yeah, it really doesn't matter, or it doesn't matter all that much, or it doesn't matter anymore, as opposed to I don't
Ah.
care. Because the truth is, I do care, and it doesn't matter.
Mhm. Mhm.
Like I wouldn't say I don't care what people think of me. That's in the back of my mind, but it doesn't influence what I do because
Mhm.
it doesn't matter.
Mhm.
Maybe
Mhm.
that's just semantic differential, but means a lot in my head anyhow.
No, I think you've made a really good point because to your point, it's rare that we actually don't care, but
Hmm.
it's often that it doesn't matter,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's very true. And those semantics can be not only communicated, I think the way we communicate them actually impacts how we feel about it as well, let alone how it's received by others, right? Even our own
Mhm.
words and our own language, the way we use them can impact our own inner environment, either our mindset or how we physically respond to how we use
Absolutely.
language. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Which brings me really to this idea of engaging has come through this whole conversation, engaging people, engaging people. What is it, David, that's so important to you about that? You've said a few things around it, but if we go really down to the seed of it, what is it about engaging people that is such an important thing for you?
Why is it important? I, I'm not sure. This feels more like a head response than a heart
Mm,
response when I say this. But I just believe that I can be of more service. I can do more good. There's more leverage if I take that approach. And that sounds like a head thing. That's why you're doing this because. I happen to believe that's true though,
mhm,
that I could do that. Like I was just looking over at the wall here, and I have this on a whiteboard. It's going to be destroyed with the rest of the building, quite frankly, but it just says gifts. When I think, what are the gifts? What am I grateful that I have? And so, sense of humor that I think is helps people relax and feel psychologically safe if it's
mm,
used appropriately.
mm,
Flexibility, because you can make something work. I really do believe I have a growth mentality. I'm looking to learn, and part of that ties into curiosity as well. Friends, I have some amazing.
mm,
I am so grateful for the friends that I have, and maybe more than I than I can handle in terms of a close group. But I have some peripheral people out there that are acquaintances, but people that I know I can count on, that know can count on me, and
mm,
that's almost uh, a way of measuring value in a
mhm,
way, or
mm,
or capital. Capital is the word I was
mhm,
looking for. I think I speak fairly well and quite comfortable speaking, like with one-on-one or hundreds of people. It doesn't really matter to me. I think I'm fairly creative in terms of the way that I look at things. And
mhm,
also, an interesting our conversation, the bottom one says designing for engagement. So, so it just feels like those are gifts. Why I think the best gifts are one that you can give to other people, not the ones that you keep for yourself.
Oh, isn't that beautiful? It's true, right? Gifts are for other people.
Hmm.
They're the things that we bring forward for the benefit of others.
Yeah.
The thing about, and those are all, as you know, I've known you a while, and those ring very true in my experience of you, most certainly. The thing about engaging, I'm curious about, 'cause you said you've got the head answer. As you, as you're lighting up a room and you see that people are engaging and you're experiencing that, what shifts for you as the facilitator or the person who's structuring that conversation?
W- Um, excuse me, unconsciously, I really want to leverage that and raise my game. Like if I see there's progress going, how can we keep that going? Like that's really,
Yeah.
create the opportunity for more of that. I mean, I'd much rather have someone in a room be negative than be non-responsive.
Mm,
When I'm doing sessions, especially if I know it's going to be a tough group, I'll start by telling people you've got a choice when you come in here in terms of the view or the attitude you want to take. And you can be a learner, contributor, you can be a vacationer, you can be a hostage. And, the learner is the one who says, my time is valuable, the company's resources are valuable. I'm going to make sure I learn something that's going to help me and the people that I supervise and work with.
mm,
Vacationer, their objective is just to be there without embarrassing themselves or hurting their head when they fall asleep on their desk. The hostage doesn't want to be there. They
mm,
didn't have an option. Whatever's happening, they don't want to have part of it. They're very clear. because, okay, let's take a break. Don't want to break. We're going to get small groups. Hate small groups. Okay, we're going to ask people to mix and match. Don't want to mix and match. And so I just let people know that, hey, it's your choice. If there's anything I can do that makes it easier to slide towards the learner end, let me know. I was working for a mining company in northern BC. And this one guy, and they're all pretty, and they're mostly guys, and they're all pretty big. Like, they're all bigger than I am. They could, twist me into a pretzel. And this one guy said, well, I'm here as a hostage. I said, great. Thank you for letting me know. And then we carried on. And the fact that I didn't try to persuade him he shouldn't be a hostage or engage the egos made it so much easier for him to come around afterwards and start to participate when it was his choice and not mine. Right. So once you see that, you kind of go, oh, there's hope in the world, right? And quite often those that are most skeptical, if you engage them, they'll bring along everyone else because they have a reputation for not being engaged. It's like, oh, if George is engaged, maybe we should be too, right? So
yeah, you're making such a good point. I have slightly different language around learner, vacationer, hostage, but in the work that I do around creating what I call a differentiated value, if you will, I'm saying if your value proposition isn't somehow generating either the engaged response or the I'm out, sort of that, no, this doesn't resonate with me. If you're getting, we want the lean in or lean out response. I always say if there's a neutral response, they're not interested, right? They might be a client, but they're not engaged. They're just there until something better comes along. And so what we're looking for is always that response. And in your world, particularly as a facilitator, by knowing where people stand, you can help people become more engaged should they choose that. But like you said, if you don't try to push a hostage into the environment of the learner, if you don't push that, sometimes they'll find their way there on their own, right?
Yeah.
Right. And I believe it's the same thing very often with the value proposition. It's like, make the offer and give people an opportunity to respond, but you can't convert someone. They will convert themselves over time if you make sense.
Something just occurred to me when we think about engaging and with a client relationship. So if I am seen as, my preference in working with my clients is to be seen as a partner in their success. If I'm only being perceived as a supplier or a vendor, I don't feel that we're as engaged as would benefit both of us. Right? So how can we get to that point that we're mutually invested in that? And when I'm working with you, and I know that a lot of entrepreneurs would argue against this, but when I'm working with a client, I want to work with that client right now. I'm not thinking about what can I do to set myself up for more business in the future. Maybe I'd make more money if I were to do that, but that just feels, that wouldn't feel good to me. I don't really care what's going on now. I want you to think that I'm wonderful and you're going to work with me again later.
Right. Well, that's the partnership, that you're chasing the value rather than the perceived opportunity, or sometimes creating a false opportunity, which may or may not be in a client's best interest, right? Where you're creating an opportunity or creating false demand, if you will. That does happen, certainly. And I think that to your point, when you're in a relationship with a partner, that client or partner with you, if they're partnering with you, there's first a level of safety that comes with that, in a sense, that allows the curiosity and exploration to go into territories that they may not feel comfortable going into otherwise. And, I see this so often with clients around this exact thing, where the value proposition feels like it has to be designed such that the value is contrived right? And so we always work to making the value match what the client needs are, genuinely and I would imagine, helping them differentiate that from the perspective of this is the value I see, this is how I can deliver it, this is why it's important. I would imagine you see that in your work all the time.
Yeah, I try to. Well, and also sometimes when you have that kind of a connection, because it's caring about that other person as well as a client or consultant, right? So say, here's one of my colleagues. I think they could really use your services. I'm sure you get a lot of referral business, right? And not from, oh, we better keep it to ourselves. She's a great coach. We don't want other people to be more successful than we are. No, it's about how to help and support Michelle. And as an indirect measure, when the relationship continues after the opportunity to work with that person as a client is passed, that's a really good sign. So
Yeah.
I used to do a lot of work with Shell and leadership development, and the fellow I was working with retired and moved from Calgary to Vancouver Island, and every time we've been over in Vancouver Island, I stopped to say hello. We've had coffee, family comes by and things like that. And when I was there a couple of weeks ago, I said, "So, when did you actually retire from Shell?" She said, 2012. 2012, 13 years ago,
That's
right? And I
phenomenal.
probably spent more time with him as a friend
Yeah.
afterwards than as a
Oh,
client before that. And another fellow who's CEO of a credit union, he retired. And I still see he and his wife when I'm traveling up island, up to Vernon, we, have lunch and things like that. And I love that when you get invited to their weddings.
yeah.
That's a pretty good sign. And it's after the client engagement. So it's based on person to person friendship and
Yeah.
relationship rather than role to role
Right.
relationship.
Exactly. And that's what you spoke to earlier. You alluded to all these beautiful relationships and friendships that you have over the course of your career
Yeah.
maintained and created. It's beautiful. Okay, so got a question for you.
Okay, I'm ready.
You said um, that you would like to be invited to go on the spaceship
Yep.
because of the value that you would bring to that community on the spaceship with you.
Yeah.
So as you look forward into the next iteration, like as you're thinking about what's next for you, what value are you excited to be creating right now, David, that might get you invited onto that spaceship?
Well, I haven't figured how to monetize this or how to demonstrate the value of it, but I think there's a lot of value in someone being able to have a chat with someone else where there's no hidden objective, there's
Mm,
no guile or anything like that. Just to have a conversation because I think that people hear things differently when they say it out loud to someone else than when they just think about it themselves
mhm,
or write it down. So I think there's a
mhm.
lot of value in that. And in fact, I have my license plate on my car says Chat DG, right?
Good for you.
So how to have a chat, and it's kind of like what's the value of an idea that you're able to express without having to worry if someone's going to take and run with it or
Yeah,
judge you for it or things
yeah.
like that. So that's the kind of thing that I would do naturally. I love to do that.
Hmm.
It'd be nice if someone said, "Oh, really? This has been so valuable. I would like to pay you for that." Then I get to go, "No, no, no, no. Well, if you feel badly if you didn't pay me, okay." Right. And I see doing that. So and and this is kind of contrary to what I've said so far about one person speaking, everyone listening, that I recently did a 10-minute, in effect, a keynote or a presentation, which I never do. But I had so much fun doing that. But it was also engaging people. Like I think there's a lot of opportunity to have interactive keynotes.
Hmm.
I love to MC or host events that connects people, connects ideas, and ensures that people in the audience have an opportunity to wrestle with ideas. That would be a dream. I love doing my podcast and chatting with people. So, I'd see that's a natural extension
Hmm.
of all of this. I love to offer different perspectives, that to hold it out for someone to examine without having to persuade them that you need to agree with this. I don't really care. Here, like as a facilitator, common wisdom says you should be neutral. You shouldn't offer opinions. And I kind of think, you know what? If I know something that may keep them out of trouble or avoid something they're unaware of, I would feel badly if I didn't at least offer it for consideration. Not
Mm.
trying to persuade you, not trying to say what you do one way or another, but hold up these different perspectives. So, seeing things from different angles. If there was a way to do that, that would be so cool. I love facilitating problem solving, not having to have the answer myself, but helping other people explore to
Mm.
come up with it. Like that's just so much fun. So if I could do more of those things going ahead, I'd be even happier than I am now.
That's spectacular. So I heard you want to connect people with ideas, expose people to more perspectives, and facilitate those great conversations.
Yeah, and one of the things that people say I'm good at, and I guess I am, is connecting people.
Yeah.
Like I love, hey, you should really talk to this person. This person might be able to do that. And I'll read something and send it out to someone because I thought you might be interested in that. I love connecting enough knowing I love knowing enough about a person that I have a sense of who they might be interested in and what they might be interested in.
Yeah.
Like I love it when people say, I am so glad you connected us. Wow. So I love doing that. All of these things are things that are kind of natural traits. They're not typically skills that someone has on a list of here's the menu of things that I do that you can
Hmm.
pay me for. So,
Hmm. Well, those
which
are
is
the
a challenge.
skills, but the way you do it is through these connections and engagement and bringing curiosity and the playful nature, all driven from who you have been through your life. It's beautiful. So, for those people who would like to connect with you and have more of those interesting conversations with your chat DG skill set, where might people find you to reach out?
Well, so I have two two websites. One is tied in with my podcast, which is freshperspectives.ca.
Okay.
And the other is davidgouthro.com. That's D-A-V. No, don't write this down if you're driving, folks out there, but DAVIDGOUTHRO.com. And, I'm happy if anyone wants to chat, happy to send out a URL for a virtual coffee.
Amazing.
Love doing that.
Perfect. And are you also active on any of the social channels, whether it's LinkedIn or Instagram, or where might
Yeah.
people find you there?
LinkedIn for sure, and Facebook. I don't really. For me, that's just fun. Like I don't get involved in political harangues or things like that, or telling people how bad it is. I just take photos of things I think about and these
Nice.
random all over the map reflections. But Facebook or LinkedIn for business.
LinkedIn is the one. Perfect. Good to know. We'll make sure people have those. Is there anything else that you'd like to offer, David, before we finish up today?
No, I just, I can't remember. A friend of mine, Fred Donaldson, is a play therapist that I met many, many years ago. And I can't remember if he exactly said this. He has a book called Playing by Heart. And, I
Mm,
think the notion of playing like your life depends on it, that play is actually, something to take seriously because it's a way that we learn and grow and regenerate and things like that. I remember years ago doing some workshops after IBM was spinning off a number of companies and excuse me, there's one called ISSC and I was down in the States doing a couple of workshops called Fun Without Guilt. And that fun is valuable when you're having fun. It's in the moment. You're not thinking about the past. You're not worrying about the future. You're in the moment. And where do you need to be time wise when you're trying to provide quality and customer service? It's in the moment. So,
mm.
having fun in the moment that's purposeful, I think is good for clients, good for oneself, good for health, good for the planet.
Sounds like a lot of goodness.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you for being playful with us today. It's been a joy.
This is truly a pleasure for me. Thank you so
Aw,
much, Michelle. Thanks for the invitation.
my delight. Thank you, David. We'll see you again soon. Bye for now.